Hey guys, Jack Collins here, back at it again with another video, and this time it's going to be something that involves Marvel yet again, but this time it's going to be different because it's going to be my first video game review, and what better game to start off with than the Deadpool. I, of course, am not alone. Here with me to catch you up on the history of the characters, my good buddy TJ Sembe, the biggest Deadpool expert I know, as well as probably one of the people who inspired me to make this video.
Deadpool expert? Seriously? What is he talking about? I've never even heard of the guy.
I mean, he really liked my video on Slapstick, which most of you may know me from. And my boy only got featured in one video game, Marvel Future Fight, where he looked like a sleep paralysis demon but played quite nicely, and had a good moveset with laser guns, bombs, and his mallet gritty to boot. But either way, back to Deadpool. While most of you may know him from the movies, Deadpool actually has a long and convoluted history within the comic pages. Luckily, to help us out here today is my good friend and yours, TJ Sembe. Take it away, TJ.
Hello there. I am TJ Sembe, and thanks to Mr. Jack Collins, I'm going to be your resident Deadpool expert for this video. Okay. Just like any comic book character that's been around for over 30 years, Deadpool's gone through a lot of weird, confusing stuff. Unlike every comic book character, it's Deadpool, so that's a lot. Like being a sumo wrestler prior to becoming the Merc with the mouth. So naturally, I think it makes sense to break this guy down to his core. The Marvel character Deadpool is a mercenary with regenerative abilities named Wade Wilson, not too unlike the DC character Deathstroke, a mercenary with regenerative abilities named Slade Wilson. Yeah, especially with the parodic, satirical elements that surround Deadpool nowadays, it's safe to assume that Deadpool is meant to be a Deathstroke parody. There's actually a myth that Deadpool came about specifically because Rob Liefeld tried and failed to draw Deathstroke, leading to Deadpool's design and Rob repurposing the character as a playful jab at his DC counterpart. I'm not sure how true this really is, and I'm unsure whether people at Marvel would even be allowed to confirm it, but it is fun to think about. What the creators at Marvel do say, though, is that Deadpool was essentially meant to be a mashup of Spider-Man and Wolverine. He had the annoying, sarcastic, quippy personality used to mask his trauma like Spidey, and the healing abilities, general, actual trauma, and memory problems of Wolverine. Pair that with Mark Waid's approach, who said he thought of writing Deadpool as writing Bugs Bunny, and you've got Deadpool, the personality and story of Spider-Man and Wolverine with the character of a fourth-wall-breaking trickster. But believe it or not, Deadpool actually didn't start off as a superhero, nor an anti-hero. Deadpool was first a supervillain. Rob Liefeld was a hot young artist at Marvel in the 90s, known for his kinetic, eye-catching panels that got issues off shelves. Now you probably know him as the guy that liked to draw pouches but didn't know how to draw feet, or anything for that matter. Which is actually true. Rob was a self-taught artist that never learned to draw professionally, which led to his over-the-top style that was eye-catching, sometimes for good reasons, and sometimes not so good. Regardless, Rob Liefeld and Fabian Nicenza first conceptualized Deadpool as a villain of the week for issue number 98 of the New Mutants. Nicenza thought it would be fun for Cable to fight someone that would talk him to death, and apparently fans did too. People sent tons of fan mail gushing over Deadpool, understandably so in my completely unbiased opinion, which led to Deadpool reappearing in X-Force, a follow-up series to New Mutants, as well as further appearances in Avengers and Daredevil. Eventually, Marvel decided Deadpool was getting too big for the side character role and gave him his first miniseries, The Circle Chase, 1993. With art from Joe Maurieta, Liefeld had temporarily left Marvel at the time, the writer of this series, Fabian Nicenza, tied it to the earlier events in New Mutants, putting Deadpool and the rest of the mercenary world on the hunt for a legendary stash of super awesome weapons. Along the way, we met Weasel, who's effectively Deadpool's henchman, and eventually even Vanessa, from the movie, but we'll come back to her later. Like most Deadpool stories, Deadpool is selfish and insane throughout most of the plot, but at the end, ultimately does the right thing, destroying the superweapon and saving Vanessa's life. Shortly after the Circle Chase, in 1994, Mark Waid was next up on writing a Deadpool miniseries, Sins of the Past, with art from Ian Churchill, Ken Lashley, and Lee Weeks. This series laid the groundwork for the more human and complex side of Deadpool's character and psyche, introducing the focus on Deadpool's self-hatred via his fear of showing his disfigured face. It also gave us the classic Deadpool story. A douche with the heart of gold learns that he doesn't have to be the bad guy. Like most of these types of Deadpool stories, he learns his lesson because he falls in love with a girl with a kind heart. In this case, it was Siren. In the story, we finally get Deadpool the anti-hero, who fights mostly for his own selfish goals but works with the good guys and even saves people, despite how things look at first. While we don't have time to look at the entire plot today, I guess it's important to note that Wade's healing factor gets stolen by Dr. Kilbrew, who uses it to save Black Tom Cassidy from the movie.
Black Tom Cassidy.
White Wade Wilson. What's your superpower? Cultural appropriation?
Does Deadpool manage to get it back? Yes. Of course he does. How else would he land his solo series? Titled, you guessed it, Deadpool. The series ran for 69 issues. I'm sure Deadpool had a say in that number. From 1997 to 2002, and it was here that we started to get a proper look at the Deadpool we know and love today. Kinda. Deadpool in the comics, starting off as a villain, was generally a lot more villainous, surprise surprise, and psychotic than the Deadpool you probably know today, even after he became more of an anti-hero. Pair that with scientists messing with his memory, and Deadpool's insanity, and you've got a lot of uncertainty about what Wade has actually gone through, including the fact that he isn't the real Wade Wilson, but I think that's a bit too much to cover for this video. One thing that is clear, however, is that Lil Pool grew up somewhere in Canada under a probably abusive, probably alcoholic father that probably didn't die before Deadpool ran off to join the military as a teenager. Becoming a highly skilled mercenary, Wade eventually fell in love with a prostitute named Vanessa Carlyle. From the movie. Yeah. Young kid, it definitely seems like this was written in a way to try and emphasize Wade's psychotic douchiness, while also being ambiguous enough to not specifically outright say anything. But it's the 90s, I don't know. Moving on. Like the film, Wade finds out that he has cancer and abandons Vanessa, joining a follow-up to the Weapon X program with the promise that it'll cure his cancer and turn him into a superhero. Wade successfully gets his cancer cured and becomes Weapon 11, just like the other movie.
Hey guys, Future TJ here. I made a mistake here. Whoopsie doopsie. I wrote this down, I recorded this, and did not realize that I had gotten this wrong until just now while I was editing the video. Deadpool in the comics is not Weapon 11. He's part... The whole numbered thing, it works a little differently than the movies, the Weapon X stuff, for those of you who are familiar with the Fox movies. In the comics, there is the Weapons Plus, which is what makes Weapon X Weapon 10, right? And there's like Weapon 1, Weapon 2, and so on and so forth. Deadpool is not part of that numbered program. He's basically part of the subset. He is part of the Weapon X program specifically. So he's like in innovation within Weapon X. Yeah, so I mixed that up, I guess. Throwing a little fun fact in there, just because I'm wasting your time, though. He was initially planned. Rob Liefeld did pitch him as Weapon 9 before they actually had a Weapon 9, before they even had any other weapons, I believe. That was why Rob Liefeld envisioned Deadpool as like potentially being a failed version of Wolverine. So he's the one that they screwed up on, and then Wolverine is when they started to get things right as Weapon X. Yeah.
But the effects seemed to only be temporary. When Wade's cancer returned, he was kicked out of Weapon X and sent to the hospice, the facility where a certain Dr. Kilbrew, remember that guy, and his assistant Ajax, from the movie, would cruelly experiment on and torture failed heroes like Wade without the Canadian government's knowledge. This place was a lot more messed up than how it was shown in the film, something I found kind of disappointing actually, but the general story of Ajax being jealous of and annoyed by Wade, as well as the whole Felix thing, was straight from the comics. They did a great job with that. What we didn't get to see, though, was Death. I'm sure you've heard of Wade's lover. Literally, Death, the reason she ends up falling for him is specifically because of what he goes through in the hospice, with Wade being brought to the brink of death only to be ripped back to life, over and over again. This is also where we see the origin of the name Deadpool. Similar to the film, the Deadpool was a term inmates at the hospice used to bet on when they thought they would die. Wade spends a long time in here, becoming disfigured from the torture and his cancer scars, but he also finds friendship with another particularly nice inmate, an innocent guy that Ajax tortures to death just to get at Wade. Before Ajax rips Wade's heart out, killing him, finally allowing Wade to be with Death. But instead, Wade pulls a Darth Maul with his desire for vengeance kickstarting his healing factor and becoming Deadpool. Deadpool goes on to kill Ajax and search for Vanessa, the love of his life. He finds and saves her, just like the movie, and the two are happily reunited. Not. Unlike the movie, Vanessa rejects Wade, leaving him alone once more. Throughout the rest of the series, we get to meet Blind Al from Death, as well as see Deadpool try out superheroing. Like most Deadpool stories, this often goes with him choosing to do the right thing, but in a way that makes him look bad.
Being a hero takes only a few moments. Few moments. Doing the ugly stuff no one else will do.
A good example of this you might recognize is in Deadpool 2, when he kills a psychotic child abuser who's being held hostage, making it look like Deadpool just killed an innocent man that was being held hostage. Aside from his struggles with self-worth and a desire to do good, he also tortures his friends Al and Weasel and uses some new doohickeys. A hologram image inducer Wade can use to conceal his identity, and a teleporter, which he later discards because it makes things too easy. I believe the teleporter actually makes an appearance in the game, so pretty important to know that, huh? This whole recap isn't completely useless, is it? Anyways, after the Deadpool series, Deadpool returns in all sorts of miniseries, like the iconic Spider-Man/Deadpool, all sorts of other guest appearances, and other runs, one of which being written by Daniel Way. What's notable about Way's approach is beyond refocusing back on Wade's psyche, which is shown beautifully in this panel from one of the first issues, Daniel Way managed to blend this with other aspects of Deadpool's character, introducing concepts that have since become iconic, such as Wade's text boxes. For those of you who don't really read comics, these square boxes are typically used to represent narration, either from a narrator or as an inner monologue for the character itself. Wade, though, being an insane fourth wall breaker, can see these boxes, sort of like Gwenpool if you know her, and talk back to them, effectively manifesting them as voices in his head for other people in his universe. These two characters also appeared in the Deadpool game, which Daniel Way was actually a writer on. Besides the schizophrenia, suicide, and depression, Daniel Way also showcased a side of Deadpool that is often missed, due to how difficult it can be to write. You see, Deadpool is often seen as random and unpredictable, but really good Deadpool stories take those random and unpredictable moments, have them as jokes, but then also have them pay off later, leaving you wonder whether Deadpool just got lucky, or he actually was planning these things all along. Deadpool ain't as dumb as he plays. If you've seen Across the Spider-Verse, this is sort of like what Hobie Brown was doing throughout that movie, when he was teaching Miles how to do stuff and grabbing random tech.
Bet this doesn't even do anything.
Maybe it did before you ripped it out of a wall.
It's propaganda, bro. To distract you from the truth.
It looks random at first, but as it turns out later on, he was actually using it to make his own doohickey. Anyways, back to Way and Wade. We also got to see more of Wade's healing factor. Namely, that it can't be replicated because it specifically works in a way that combats his cancer, as well as the answer to the age-old healing question. When you cut off his arm/leg/head/whatever off, will both grow? Will one grow? Do they need to be reattached? The answer? Evil Deadpool. Also known as B and C are both correct. Daniel Way's run also spawned the Spider-Man/Deadpool series, which is great, and featured a little crossover with the Thunderbolts. Well, I thought I should mention that since at the time of writing this, the movie has just come out. On top of that, Way's run also included a Hitmonkey crossover, another underappreciated Marvel character. Go watch the show. Not sponsored by Disney+. After Daniel Way, Jerry Duggan and comedian Brian Posehn took Deadpool's reins in 2013, with Deadpool Daddy Duggan going on to take the crown for writing the most Deadpool stories overall. These were the guys that brought Deadpool into a more R-rated light, similar to the films. I mean, the first issue has him doing all sorts of bowel-y things to dead presidents. But I think what Mr. Jack Collins really wants you to know about is the Mercs for money. Why? Slapstick, of course. While this wasn't Deadpool's first encounter with Slapstick, the two actually clashed earlier in a couple issues of Spider-Man/Deadpool. This time around, Deadpool and Slapstick started working together. After a mercenary named Solo impersonated Deadpool and saved an ambassador, leading to people's general perceptions of Deadpool skyrocketing, Deadpool got the idea to put together his own team of Deadpools that would merc around the globe. With Solo as his first hire, the Mercs for Money were also composed of Slapstick, Stingray, Madcap, Terror, Fool Killer, and Massacre. Honestly, I know basically nothing about these guys. They would dress up as Deadpool and help rid the world of any and all scum. The team ended up wearing color-coded Deadpool costumes after another Deadpool impersonator was trying to ruin the real Pool's reputation. Once they disposed of the impersonator, everyone went back to their normal costumes and back to work. But this didn't last long, as the Mercs found out that Deadpool was skimming money from them. Naturally, they retrieved and burnt their contracts, parting ways with Deadpool after beating him up and leaving him with no Mercs and no money. Later on, Domino did end up creating a new Mercs for Money team, but we don't have to get into that today. Of course, that isn't absolutely everything there is to know about Deadpool. Like both me and Jack said earlier, he's got a long and convoluted history, as well as a lot more allies and enemies than just Slapstick, such as Rogue.
Ah, the sweet southern belle from Mississippi. Rogue is hotter than the sun in the summertime. She says shit like that. Rogue absorbs the skills, powers, memories, and anything else through skin-on-skin contact. Yeah, I could get down with some skin-on-skin contact.
And Domino,
Domino has what she calls probability manipulation. I call it dumbass luck. She used to spend her time as a mercenary like me, which makes her even hotter. But now she works with the good guys like the X-Men. She'll come back.
Who appear in the game, as well as Bob, the Hydra agent. Hydra Bob, I don't know. But I've already talked for too long already, so how about we get back to the actual star of this video, Jackathy Collinson and the 2013's Deadpool bracket video game, close bracket.
Thanks, TJ. Now, as for the game itself, there is barely, if any, history behind its development other than it was developed by HUUUGE Studios. Best known for their work on the highly acclaimed Transformers games like the War/Fall Cybertron duology, and the surprisingly good Dark of the Moon game. With their fun and awesome shooter and blades gameplay and awesome stories to be told, HUUUGE themselves seems like the perfect developers to make a game based on everybody's favorite Merc with a mouth. With an awesome marketing campaign and a really huge presence at the San Diego Comic-Con of that year in 2013, it looked like the game was going to be a smash hit in terms of superhero games like the Batman Arkham series or Spider-Man 2. But then the game itself finally released, and while it's not terrible, it's definitely very rough around the edges in more ways than one, if you know what I mean. The game's plot is simply about Deadpool being bored after stopping a media mogul named Chance White earlier on, and tags on with the X-Men consisting of Rogue, Domino, Cable,
You like tacos, Wade?
and Psylocke, and Wolverine, who in Wade's words, more or less, is
Wolverine! My healing factor came from his DNA. So we're like twins, except he's short and furry, and he smells funny. He loves it when people ask him if they can fly the Blackbird. He's got these awesome adamantium claws that cut through anything, including my body when I piss him off.
to stop the plans of Mr. Sinister and his evil team of mutants called the Marauders, who consist of Blockbuster, Vertigo, and Arclight, from taking over the world. Simple as that. Now, this plot on paper, written by Daniel Way, sounds like a really fun, exciting story for Deadpool to push his usual brand of humor in while also teaming up with heroes for a Monster of the Week style villain battle. It's just that I feel like it focuses too much on the humor and not enough on the other aspects to make the character of Deadpool feel complete. Every time something serious goes on, Deadpool feels the need to throw in a joke or something random to ease the tension when really he's being rather annoying and won't shut up. I also wish we had more villains than just Mr. Sinister and the Marauders themselves, because it feels like the entire game is just around them. It would have been neat to have a Deadpool game feature Deadpool villains like T-Ray, Ajax, Deathtrap, Evil Deadpool, or Slayback, rather than just use the X-Men villains, because it feels lazy and a huge missed opportunity to do so. Because this game feels like a Deadpool game, but the X-Men were put in at the last minute to make the game sell. As for the gameplay itself, while the shooting, teleportation, belt using, and slashing does fit Deadpool to a T and feels very much like a Platinum-style affair, I really feel like there should have been more variety in the weapons, because every sword feels like a stronger version of said sword, and every gun feels like a stronger version of said gun. Why not let me choose between weapons from the comics, like those massive laser guns he occasionally uses, or a red and black rocket launcher? As for melee stuff, why not have a red and black mallet that can be used to bluntly strike enemies when they least expect it? A pair of imitation Wolverine claws for stabbing people when you don't want to get your katanas all messy, the baby knife, or just boot knives in general, or just straight up using your fists for some stylish hand-to-hand combat stuffs on enemies and bosses. Speaking of enemies and bosses, the enemies aren't really anything special and just boil down to the typical big guys, little guys, and guys with occasional mutant powers that you rarely see throughout the game. The bosses aren't much either, with Arclight, Vertigo, and Blockbuster being the only real bosses you face, and then you face them again in the Gauntlet, with Mr. Sinister being the final boss. They all feel like just massive bullet sponges and don't give you any real challenge besides maybe Sinister offering clones to himself to get into the fray, but even then, they're easy enough to take out as you get to Sinister himself and take him out with a good old punch to the family jewels and a massive Sentinel boot landing on him for good measure. Despite all of its setbacks, there's one thing I really liked about this game is the voice acting, especially Nolan North and Steve Blum as Deadpool and Wolverine respectively, who've probably had more times to play the characters in media than Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds ever could. I love it when they're both on screen together, and they make for some of the funniest moments in the game period. It's the classic Wolverine and Deadpool relationship we know from the comics, but video game form. I also love Fred Attack Shore's Cable. He's great and really sells all his lines as he's barking at Deadpool to do the right thing, and he should reprise his role someday. That voice fits so well with Cable that you forget it's the Hulk, Megatron, and Bane voicing him. And Mr. Sinister being voiced by Keith Ferguson, my god, this man is underrated when it comes to VA work. The guy also voices Reaper in Overwatch 1 and 2, Bullboy from Cuphead, Lord Hater in Wander Over Yonder, Batman, DC Superhero Girls, Megabind, and Blue and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and its upcoming reboot. So Keith himself has a very stacked resume, and Sinister is on that list. Keith gives such a villainous and serious undertone to a villain that doesn't appear much, but it's nice to see him get a role that he can flex his vocal cords in. Now I could tell my friend that Mr. Sinister and Blue sound alike because they're voiced by the same guy. Her heart will probably be crushed though. Just kidding. Speaking of Deadpool VAs, while I do love Nolan North's take on the character and I love how they're still using him to this day, part of me wishes they got back John Kassir from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2 because of how he perfectly got the character's voice down to a gravelly rasp, yet also having that wit we know and love from him.
I prefer the title Cleaner of the Gene Pool.
But I'm glad that the devs went with Nolan because of his wit and comedic charm, not because he's played red characters like Raphael T, Materia Cliffjumper, and War and Fall of Cybertron. Oh no. And wanted Nolan Northiness, and they got it, baby! But yeah, aside from the stacked voice cast, this game feels very rushed, and I feel like a lot of wasted potential when it comes down to the gameplay and story. And it goes from being good to just, well, okay at best. But what if we were to change everything about that and make it an actual good game that not only embraces Deadpool, but is also just a really fun game in general with a good story? Well, that's where I come in and make some improvements to make it a better experience for the fans and fellow gamers alike. Basically, the premise of this new game is a 3D beat-em-up, which would involve Deadpool being a mercenary for hire, having to go up against multiple D-list villains and also a lot of his own villains and rogues to climb to the top and eventually start his own Mercs for Money business after seeing a ton of TV commercials for Heroes for Hire with Power Man and Iron Fist. Essentially, the game from there has you select between Deadpool and the Mercs for Money, as in the original lineup consisting of Solo, Slapstick, Stingray, Madcap, Terror, Fool Killer, and Massacre, and select a villain to go up against, as each of them would have stages loaded with enemies and such before you get to their boss fight. The characters themselves all have different and very unique abilities depending on who you choose. Deadpool, of course, plays most like he should be in the game, but his arsenal is more varied and consists of not only his adamantium katanas and various guns, but also the weapons I've already mentioned, as well as the use of hand-to-hand combat. Solo is very much a gun/knife-heavy character with a huge amount of firepower if you're into those kinds of characters. As for the other characters, Massacre is just a Deadpool clone, but more or less slower and weaker. Stingray is very much a ranged character who can fly around and emit energy rays from his suit, as well as use the REM cannon, which can freeze enemies, which makes them more susceptible to melee damage. Fool Killer uses his purification gun for quick and easy kills. Terror is a tank and very strong because he can apply new body parts into his other forms, as the best hand-to-hand combatant due to this. Now as for the final character, Slapstick, he'd be very much a jack-of-all-trades character, with his toony arsenal consisting of his mallet Gertie, boxing gloves, anvils, pies, bombs, and other explosives for a more ranged approach. And finally, him turning buff and taking blows while also painfully dishing them out on his own. Buff form can be popped after a few certain attacks, but he's probably the fastest and also heavy hittingest of the team due to his cartoony nature and such. Another story idea would possibly have Taskmaster as a mini-boss for the Mercs to face with his copy abilities and to mimic the moves of other superheroes in these fights, not only to kill the Mercs, but to also see if they can last long enough to prove that they are mercenaries and are willing to kill. That's how I would improve the game overall. Adding in more Mercs and less mutants is how I do it. But it's a shame now that Deadpool isn't really getting any games because after the 2013 game out, High Moon Studios was made into a Call of Duty company and no studio has since then tried to make a Deadpool game. He's had cameos in more recent games like Ultimate Alliance and Midnight Suns, but I'm hopeful that one day, the Merc with a mouth gets a chance to shine in video games once more. If you made it this long, thanks for watching the video and thanks to TJ Assembly for his awesome narrating and editing skills. Subscribe to him if you want more of his content. This is Jack Collins, signing off.